Hi everyone, in this video I'm wanting to see what you think is better. I'm inside a room which I'm going to try and take a photo of, and I think there is a high dynamic range of bright and dark in this room. And the question is, should you use HDR software or should you use flash? Now, in some of my previous videos we've done of interior property photography, I always say use flash. Somebody or one or two people said, Dom, I thought all the magazines use HDR. It's like, well, not really. Very few have used HDR because generally HDR makes things look a little bit dirty. Where there's kind of like these lines here, they would end up looking just kind of dusty and dirty and grey and not very nice. So I always say use flash. But here I'm going to ask you guys what you think is best. Okay, so what the high dynamic range is that we've got in this picture is we've got the bright light. It's an overcast day, so that's good. There's not any harsh shadows of outside. And then inside, as you can see my camera quickly changing the exposure rate, it's a little bit darker. So really pretty much only lit by these lights at the side and obviously the ambient light coming in from the side. But as you see, when this camera is exposed for these sofas, the window out there is totally blown out. And if I'm going to take this shot from this side, again, if I'm shooting something like that, that's perfectly good exposure for this area, but the windows are totally blown out. And it'd be quite nice to see the trees out the front there. So let's see what settings we need to do HDR or if we're doing flash. So the first thing for me to do is set my camera so it is on spot metering and center focused. And I'm going to point it out of the window. That bright window there. And it's going to give me a reading on the top, so it is correctly exposed, of around 250th of a second there. So if I take a photo there, you can happily see out the window. Now the second thing I want to do is take a photo, maybe not of the black sofas, because if we try and get a spot meter reading of them, well, they're meant to be black. So I'm just going to go around the area above the lamp over there. And that's roughly giving me an exposure reading of a 45th of a second. And as you can see, the image comes out nice and bright. So that is 2.5 stops of brightness that we're getting, difference from the window to the kind of creamy walls. Now 2.5 stops, I think your camera can pretty much easily deal with that in a raw image. So I could probably try and do one single raw, but what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do a bracketed shot of 5 photos. So I have it at 250th. In fact, I might even go faster for outside. I'll go for 350th of a second. And then by the time it's come down, it will be around about a 20th of a second when it's at that bit over there. So here's the shots now. And truth be told, I'd actually be quite happy with how the photo came out at a 20th of a second. Normally, I'd obviously bump the ISO up to around about 800 instead of 200 that I've got it on just now, just so that I've got faster shutter speed so there's less blur. But because I'm doing an HDR, you always want your ISO setting as low as possible, so you don't like increase the noise every time you add the photos together in Photomatix. So let's see how that looks when we turn that into an HDR photo using Photomatix. And I definitely say that as a fairly dramatic and interesting looking photo, but is it really the best for a magazine? Now this time I'm going to use my flash, and I'm going to be using my flash so it's bouncing straight up off the ceiling up there, and that should give me the most amount of illumination all the way around. And I'm not going to be using the diffusion dome or anything because that gives directional light forward, which I don't want. So I just really want it bouncing off there and the walls behind me just now. So again, what I'll be using is the exposure rating I've got for outside the window, and then I'll still have it on spot metering, so it's just near where that lamp is over there. And what will happen is the camera will have an exposure setting set so it's for the window, but it will increase the flash, so it should make all the places bright, so that darker area over there is in the correct exposure. And that's where the clever bits of TTL through the lens technology comes in with your flash and your expensive cameras. So let's see how this shot looks. Okay, so histogram-wise, it's looking pretty good. Everything's roughly in the middle. There's very few blown out highlights and there's very few dark bits. Lighting-wise, it looks completely different from whenever we're just using the single shot, where it was at a 20th of a second. We've got this natural light coming in from outside and bouncing off here. And compared to the HDR shot, again, completely different. And the final shot, which I really want to go for, is where I'm mixing in the slow shutter speed with the flash. So the slow shutter speed is giving me this nice warm light that you can see coming in from the windows, and the flash is filling in all the shadows. So you're really balancing the flash with the ambient light. And as you can see, like the sofas are fairly dark over there and there. And when we bring in the flash bouncing off the ceiling, it fills in a lot of the shadows. So necessarily, possibly an HDR shot isn't really the best thing for this place, I think, because you really want it to look warm and cozy and have this natural light coming in. So I would say a slow shutter speed with flash to make sure that you filled in the shadows, so you've still got detail in all the bits that people might be looking at. So that's my tip for internal photography, but tell me what you think. Cheers, bye bye.